So I'd like to welcome you to the inaugural webcast of Uplink. To date, we've been an all-text publication, and this summer I've decided it's time to start branching out and doing more multimedia. We're a relatively small site. We don't have a huge amount of bandwidth to play around with, so these will be limited experiments, but I think it is time to expand the repertoire of what Uplink does. Little background, Uplink has been around for about 4 years now, small independent site, and I created it, me and a few other people, but it's been mostly my writing. My motivation for creating the site was quite simple. Video games had become a major league art form with major league issues and capable of presenting remarkable stories with great depth and subtlety. However, video games as an industry have not had the critical attention that they've deserved. And there are reasons for this. The video game industry is very new. It was still relatively small even in the mid-90s. No one took it very seriously. No one took its narratives very seriously. Today it's a huge industry. The culture is, the latest estimates are in 2008, the game industry reached $54 billion in annual revenues. This is larger than the second largest recorded media market, which is DVD sales and revenue, which was probably 48 to 50 billion, maybe as high as 51 billion last year. The estimates vary because of the gray market, file sharing and whatnot. But it's clearly the heavyweight in the driver's seat, and it continues to grow quite quickly. 54 billion, this is also about 60% bigger than box office revenues of film globally. So it's become one of the cultural heavyweights in a short amount of time. And unfortunately, one of the side effects of this rapid growth is the narratives and stories that it's producing are world class, but the critical apparatus by which we evaluate those narratives has developed much more slowly. And the big problem with the video game press, that there are two kinds of video game press by and large. One is the commercial media, IGN, GameSpot, and so forth. And they're in business, and they're there to sell advertising. They're owned by corporations, and they do their job, which is to cover the latest events. But it's not really their job to do extensive critical discussions on the material. But you can't sell advertising that way. It's a structural limitation of commercial media. The other kind of media is sort of the personalized media of a growing digital commons. And most of this consists of small-scale entertainment argument pieces and blogs, video blogs nowadays, and a lot of other forms of media. And the big problem there is that many of the people who do these blogs and materials unfortunately lack cultural perspective, and they lack cultural background. There's an enormous problem. The people that do these things, they're often very passionate about video games. They often know a great deal about the video game culture, but they know nothing about the larger history of aesthetics, and they know very, very little about even the other media forms, for instance, film culture. Because to know film culture, it's not just American film. You have to know Japanese film, Russian film, Brazilian film. You have to be transnationally literate and to know many different cultures, to be able to cross borders to actually adequately understand what's happening in any branch of transnational media. So Uplink emerged as basically a critical space, a place where people could think critically about the video game culture. Therefore, we've always shied away from commercialism. We don't get involved in fanboy, fangirl wars, console wars, or any of that kind of silliness. What we do try to do is provide a space of reflection, meditation, try to connect the things that are happening in video game culture, and fascinating things are happening in video game culture, very important things. I think some of the fundamental, video games have become one of the fundamental culture industries of the 21st century, very powerful and influential. To connect those things with changes in other media forms, other media industries, and with some of the larger changes happening in the world. We're living through a massive set of geopolitical, financial, economic, social, and political changes right now. It's not just the death of neoliberalism, it's been a long-standing set of changes, all sort of additive, happening. Everything from the decline of the American empire to the rise of the BRIC nations meaning Brazil, Russia, India, China, all of which incidentally are very important players in video games. many other kinds of changes as well. So it's a place for that kind of critical reflection. A couple very brief words about my qualifications for talking about video games. My background is in comparative literature, of all things. I actually did not start directly in media. I came to the study of media through the study of literature, and comparative literature at that. Comparative literature is a very interesting field. It's always been concerned with the issue of translation between multiple national and historical cultures. How one national culture relates to others, how one language relates to other languages, how it's possible to know and think about cultures through time, different time periods, different places, and across different genres. I've always been concerned with this. And then later I got more interested in the mass media, television culture, and then later, least of all, video game culture. Started as a hobby, turned into more than a hobby, turned into a full-time pseudo-profession, and then finally an actual profession. Today I'm an official media scholar. It's what I do for a living. And what I've taken from the study of literature is that all the narratives connect with each other. To really understand the media culture, you have to understand that it is a set of cultures. And it's not just a set of cultures that communicate in different places in the world. It's a set of cultural networks which communicate through time, communicate through history. And you have to unpack those linkages and think in a much more subtle and historically informed way if you really want to understand the logic of narratives being produced today in the transnational media.